The story of the movie begins in the year 1997 and we get to know the child Pete, who was 5 years old at the time. He was out on a trip in the car with his parents. The family was enjoying the trip. Pete was carrying a book and reading a story about one of the dogs named Elite, but while his father was driving the car, he was talking to his wife and son, and suddenly a deer passed on the road. Unfortunately, this caused a violent accident that led to the death of the father and mother. Only baby Pete was left alive. He got out of the car and started crying. Suddenly, he heard the voices of his relatives' wolves, and he felt fear, so he decided to escape into the forest. He was running in the woods carrying his bag and a book. Wolves were chasing him to prey on him, but suddenly a huge green dragon appeared. When the wolves saw this dragon, they fled from the place because the wolves are afraid of the dragon. When he saw the dragon, he was afraid of him, and he asked the dragon if he would eat it, but the dragon smiled and answered in the negative. The dragon begins to treat the child kindly and extends his hand to him to climb on his back. Indeed, he climbs on the dragon's back as they walk in the middle of the forest. 6 years have passed since this incident. We see an old man with a group of children around him telling them the story of the huge dragon. He had seen it a long time ago. Children get scared when they hear the story. After that comes the daughter of this man. She is called Grace and she is a policewoman and she works in protecting the security of the forest, and she did not believe what her father said about the huge dragon because she spent most of her time in the forest and did not see the dragon. She tells him that he must not frighten children with these fairy tales so that the children's psychological state will not be affected. But he still insists that he saw the dragon. She tells him that she will leave him with his fairy tale and go to work. Then we go back to the forest and discover that Pete has lived all these years with the dragon quite happily. He decides to name the dragon Elite, which is the same name as the hero in the book he was reading before the accident. They were playing together and having a good time. The dragon took Pete with him and they flew together. We discover after that that the dragon has the ability to hide, as he can change his body to any color and make others not see him. Pete watches Grace as this is the first time he has seen a human being after the accident. The dragon, when it saw Grace, changed its color and disappeared. The child kept watching her from afar and he was watching what she was doing. She was tagging trees. When she's busy with work, she turns away from her bag. Pete goes to the bag and steals the compass. She felt that there was a movement nearby, but when she wanted to make sure, a friend of hers appeared and called her. So she forgets about it and goes. Before they leave the forest, she throws the key to the tree-cutting machine because she was working to protect the environment, so she prevents people who cut trees and affect the environment. Then Pete takes the key and goes back to his house in the woods. Because he stayed in the jungle all his life, he didn't know about human inventions. He didn't know how to use a compass and a key. After the dragon and the child are tired, they sleep in their own tree house. Suddenly they wake up to a very loud sound. When they went out to see what was happening, they saw some machines cutting trees. We get to know a person named Gavin, who is the brother of Grace's lover. He was holding a map in his hand. Grace was trying to stop him from chopping down the woods. She tells her lover, Jack, about the work his brother is doing, and she tells him that his brother will destroy the environment. He tells her that this is Gavin's decision and he can't stop it. Meanwhile, a little girl named Natalie, who is Jack's daughter, gets out of the car. She was admiring the view of the trees in the forest, but suddenly she sees Pete. He runs away when he finds out about her seeing him and decides to run away. But she tries to catch up with him and climbs the trees to reach him, but the tree branch breaks and they fall together. But before Natalie falls, he grabs her and prevents her from falling to the ground. When she reaches the ground safely, he leaves her and flees. Everyone present came to her when they heard her screams. Pete, when he saw them, was afraid and decided to run away. Quickly he tries to climb the tree, but Gavin catches up with him. Unfortunately, he falls to the ground and passes out. Meanwhile, the dragon notices Pete's disappearance, so he decides to look for him. The dragon hears Gavin talking about Pete, and without realizing it, he falls the tree on them. But Gavin and his team hear the sound and quickly prepare their weapons and go towards the sound. But the dragon uses his ability to hide, so they find nothing. After a while Pete wakes up in the hospital. He was surprised at where he was. Grace was with the city's police officer and they were talking about Pete's situation and how the kid was out in the woods by himself. Natalie arrives at the hospital asking how Pete is, but Grace forbids her to contact him. She decides to take her with her until they know who this child is and where his family is. Meanwhile, he can escape through the window of the room. He was running fast towards the woods, but the officer saw him riding the school bus to escape, so he informed the others so that they could chase him. After a long chase, Grace is able to catch him and then take him to Jack's house near the forest. When they arrive at the house, he tries to escape again, but this time Grace tries to calm him down, promising him that she will take him back to the woods, telling him that they will not harm him. She tells him that she will take him back to the forest tomorrow after checking his information and his parents' information. He decided to agree to stay with them that day. We go back to the jungle and learn that Gavin and his team were trying to find the dragon because they found his footprints. When they reached the dragon's tree house, they found Pete's bag and book. Gavin threw the book on the ground, but when the dragon saw this scene, he got angry. So he attacks them. When they saw the dragon, they were afraid, so they decided to run away in their cars. But the dragon flies and continues to chase them until it reaches the city. Pete was happy to be with Natalie, so he draws his friend the green dragon. But she thinks that this is his imaginary friend, and she thinks that Pete imagines this thing in order to escape from the loneliness he lives in the forest. After many inquiries on Pete, the officer tells Grace that Pete's family died in an accident 6 years ago, and when the Social Services Association learned about Pete's story, they decided to take over his custody. She is saddened when she learns of his story and decides to talk to him about his parents. But he shows her the picture that he drew of the dragon. When she saw the picture, she was shocked because she had previously seen this form of the drawing with her father. Meanwhile, Gavin arrived at Jack's house after escaping from the dragon. He starts telling his brother about what happened with him. Grace was listening to them when they were talking, but she discovers that Jack did not believe his brother's words. The dragon has arrived at Jack's house. He watched Pete through the home window. He noticed that Pete was reading them a story and he was happy. He was reassured, but was sad for his separation. Then he returns to the forest. Grace returns home after knowing the truth about the dragon, but she was surprised how the child managed to live all these years in the forest alone. She gives her father a picture of the dragon that the child drew. He tells her that he saw this dragon many years ago inside the forest when he was on a hunting trip. He tells her that when he saw the dragon, he couldn't kill it and left it and returned home. For the first time, she believes what her father said. The next day she takes Natalie and Pete to the woods. She told Jack that she would hand the child over to the association, but he knew that she was lying to him, and he knew that she had taken the child to the forest. Gavin and his friends go to the jungle to find a dragon. Meanwhile, Grace, her father, and the two children arrive at a tree house in the woods. When the dragon appeared to them, they were frightened, but they discovered that it was gentle and harmless. Then Gavin and his team arrive and impale the dragon with a stun gun. They were able to control it. Pete and Grace were trying to stop them, but to no avail. Pete tells the dragon to fly and run away, but he couldn't because of anesthesia. So he falls to the ground and faints. Jack arrives at the place and he was shocked when he saw the dragon and its magnitude. Then they transport the dragon on a large truck to a giant warehouse. This repository is for Jack's work and he stays with Grace's father with the dragon. The rest of them were in the office. They were noticing that Pete was sad because of the dragon. He blames Grace because he thinks it was her fault. He was refusing to talk to her. She couldn't explain to him what happened, so she decides to leave him and go to the warehouse. There she watches the dragon wake up and he was very angry and she wanted to calm him down. Pete, when he heard the dragon's voice, he rushed to him quickly. Meanwhile, police cars arrive at the scene. Gavin tells them about the dragon he caught. Pete and Natalie take advantage of the opportunity and enter the warehouse without anyone seeing them. When they enter the warehouse, the door locks from the inside. After that, the police try to enter the warehouse, but the door was closed, so they decided to break the door and enter. When they entered, they did not find the dragon, because he used his ability to hide. They tried to find it. Grace knew the dragon was in the warehouse. Then she went to Jack and told him that they should help the dragon. Grace's father takes the truck with the dragon and speeds off. He was surprised when he saw the police cars chasing him. Gavin was also following them and trying to stop Grace's father. Unfortunately, he managed to cut them off with a car. When Grace's father tries to stop the truck, he discovers that the car's brakes have failed, so he crashes Gavin's car and drops it into the river. When the truck stops, the dragon frees itself and runs away. But when he saw the police cars approaching him, he got very angry, so he took fire out of his mouth and burned the cars on the bridge. Unfortunately, Pete and Grace were on the bridge in the car. The car is about to fall, but Pete tries to calm the dragon down. Indeed, he was able to calm him down. The dragon tried to save Grace and Jack from death. But before he can save them, the bridge falls on them. They thought they were dead, but the dragon flew in and saved them. Everyone was happy that the dragon had rescued them. When the helicopters arrived, the dragon and Pete fled. But the dragon wanted Pete back to the family he was with so he could live in safety. But at first Pete refused because he didn't want to get away from the dragon. But he tells him that this is the right decision and he should go back to a better place to live. Pete knew that the dragon wanted to leave the forest. Because everyone knew where he was, the forest would become a dangerous place for him. The dragon hugs the child for the last time, and then he delivers him to Jack's house, bids him farewell, and goes. When Grace saw him, she ran towards him and hugged him, and she was very happy when he came back. A few months later, Grace and Jack got married and decided to adopt Pete. One day, they went on a trip to the forest, and when they went, they met the dragon, but they discovered that the dragon was not alone, but with his family. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to watch more videos like this.